After OU Chief of Police Nate Tarver announced his retirement last summer, the search for his replacement began. Thanks for joining us on this week's edition of Sooner Stories. I'm Michael Buchanan. Early last semester, the university announced former FBI agent Derek Fuller would take over for Tarver. I sat down with Chief Fuller to discuss his background, his goals, and the current state of safety on campus. Take a look. After a 3-decade career in public service, Chief Derek Fuller is continuing that tradition here at OU.
So after graduating from the Naval Academy, I did, was a naval flight officer for several years. Once I did that, got out of that, I went into the FBI. If you look at my background, it's pretty much all public service. I dedicate that to my mom, who was a nurse, and my dad, who was a Marine, career Marine.
In the Navy, Fuller flew on P-3 Orions, tracking Soviet submarines. With the Bureau, he worked undercover around the world, eventually becoming the Assistant Special Agent in charge for New Mexico. He says all of those experiences impact how he approaches his position at OU.
In looking at, once I retired, it kind of gave me the ability to search for a job where I felt I could be impactful. Getting out of the Bureau, being in the Bureau kind of taught me how to deal with high-stress situations. I was over several major cases. I was over, a couple presidential inauguration security details for the FBI building. Once I got out and went into higher education, it kind of showed me that the how was important. Like what we do and why we do it was very important. And in my entire career, I've dealt in task force situations where I've dealt with state agencies, federal agencies. This is probably one of the most difficult because not only do we have to be prepared to handle those critical crisis type situations, on a day-to-day basis, we have to build those relationships with our students, with our faculty, for them to feel comfortable to talk to us, to understand that the environment is entirely different. Our success isn't about the crime stats. It's about making sure that we have a nice, safe environment for people to be able to learn.
Let me ask you about security on campus. I want to talk specifically about sexual assaults. They fluctuated over the years. The latest statistics that came out had an increase. Talk about generally campus security and some ways you're going about curbing those numbers with sexual assault specifically, but then overall campus safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think any time that we see changes in any of the statistics, whether they be up or down, you look at sometimes to try to understand why. Is it an increase in situations where our students are in environments that are either on campus or off campus, but related to where we have our clear reporting standards, that those numbers are being recorded? Are we doing a better job at capturing that information and doing it? But anytime we do that, we always want to go out with our safety messages. Make sure that you communicate with people where you're going. Make sure that that you try to keep yourself in a safe environment, so make sure people know where you're going to be so that you can help protect yourself. So us informing or giving safety tips, any situations that we have that requires a timely warning, if we do see it as an active threat to campus, make sure that we're working with our MARCOM team to get those messages out so that the rest of the campus is aware of what's going on. But basically education and making sure that people know that if they report something to us, we'll be investigated thoroughly. We will get them the resources that they need to ensure they take care of themselves, both mentally and physically, and continue follow up to make sure that if there is a perpetrator that we can identify, that we do everything we can to make sure that they go through the judicial process.
I want to ask you about swatting. It's a relatively new phenomenon in the last 10 or 15 years. OU's experienced a couple of them, one as early as August of this year, right before you got here. How do you go about that from a law enforcement perspective? It's a weird thing to respond to. How do you, from the response and then the aftermath, how do you kind of deal with situations like that?
Swatting is normally when you have information that comes in about something happening that may or may not be true. But from the law enforcement perspective, we always have to have our initial response as if this is something that is actually happening. Now, one of the things that I have done since I've gotten here is I've worked to increase our intelligence responsibilities, intelligence contacts with our federal partners and our Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as our Fusion Center, so that we're aware of when these start going around to other campuses. it's not just us, it's happening nationwide, actually worldwide. These things are coming in. They're often through the computer. They're often with, IP addresses that aren't traceable, but, they're known before they start happening. So having that information that these things are coming out kind of allows us to prepare, but we still have to be able to respond, because the one time that we don't, it may be something that is an actual call, and we want to make sure that if it is, we're able to respond to it. Now afterwards, we take the information, if it was a swatting call, share that with the Fusion Center as well as the JTTM, so that information can be shared with other chiefs in other departments so that they are aware that this could possibly be coming. Because a lot of times they're kind of targeted in particular areas. And so if we start getting them here in the Oklahoma area, normally it's going to be more than one college or university that's going to receive those.
What would you say is your biggest goal or initiative through your tenure at OU?
My big challenge is, as we talked with the president's, 1U, is doing that with the police department. We've got 3 separate campuses. As many things as we can, try to make sure that they're the same, whether it's our badging, whether it's our vision statement, and realizing that each of the campuses is different. Each of the campuses has different, culture, different environments, an urban environment versus, a primarily suburban environment here in Norman, and then Tulsa, it's kind of so trying to build that police department so that it's one, so that as our students transition, people may graduate from here and go down the health campus for their graduate, kind of knowing that, hey, this is the same department that I dealt with here. I should accept the same amount of responsiveness, the same amount of smiles and asking how are you today, and the same amount of being able to trust us. And so I think that's our big thing, and things that we've been working on as a team with all 3 campuses, is to push forward that 1U from a policing perspective, so that no matter where you go across the University of Oklahoma system, you can accept the same level of professionalism and responsiveness from the police.
Thank you, Chief Fuller, and thank you for joining us on another Sooner Stories. Join us next week for more.